What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. In this episode, I just want to discuss Iron Fist again, the Netflix series. I just did a review on Saturday about it, and I liked it for the most part. It wasn't great compared to most of the shows on cable, most of the shows on Netflix and other streaming. It's definitely just okay, but it's better than I would say most network shows, NBC, CBS. I have a hard time watching CW. I have a hard time watching a lot of those shows, and they're not really for me, most of them. But I feel like this was better than those. But in this video, I really wanted to talk about the problems that I had. I did touch on them in the review. Somebody actually told me that they thought the review was a little bit hard on it. Like I talked more about what I didn't like than what I did like. But I think what I did like was evident for most people out there. I mean, Colleen Wing, Madame Gao, Davos, and Ward. I liked a lot of the characters. Claire Temple was always good, even though she was shoehorned in there, I felt. But I just want to talk in this video about what I didn't like and elaborate on those things a bit. Basically, where I think they went wrong. So, first thing is the showrunner. This is the first Marvel Netflix property to get a showrunner who I don't think understood the material or where it needed to go, or even the character. So in being the showrunner and the guy that's really putting everything together, I feel like you're hiring some of the wrong people behind the scenes too. I felt, I don't know who they got to do the fight choreography, but whoever it was either didn't have enough time to work with the actors or just wasn't that good of a fight choreographer. The action scenes to me were good, but they should have been like on kung fu movie level awesomeness, and they really just weren't. And that to me goes to the pre-production and who you're hiring to do these things, and whether or not there's a clear laid out plan for it, and whether or not you have enough time to work with the actors who are performing these stunts and these moves, and stuntmen and women. So yeah, showrunner, first problem, and that's a big problem. Now, do I have a problem with Scott Buck? No. But do I think he was right for this show? Absolutely not. The reason why you liked, or I anyway, liked some of the boardroom stuff and some of the characters in that part of the world were because he understands drama. If you look at his past work, all this stuff is very dramatic stuff, and some of it is good. But he doesn't understand martial arts, and this should have been the martial arts movie of the Netflix series. Just like there's the vigilante story, and then you have the detective story, the thriller, and and then you have the like the hood cleaning up the neighborhood, good, super good guy in Luke Cage story, and this should have really been, and all of those shows fit perfectly into their genres. This didn't, and that's a showrunner problem. Next up, Finn Jones. Look, he's an alright actor. I liked him on Game of Thrones, and I don't want to shit on him because every actor is only as good as the material, the notes, the way everyone works together and communicates during production. That is all reflective on the performance as well. So I don't want to blame Finn Jones entirely, but he was not portraying Danny Rand right. So many people have a problem with the boardroom office stuff, and think about how much more interesting it would have been if he was true to his character in being that Buddhist monk, where he felt like a Buddhist monk who was raised in this monastery, in this deserted place, without technology, obviously, seemingly anyway, for 15 years, from when he was 10 to 25. That's a fish out of water story, and it didn't feel like that. It did it the very, very first episode when he goes in there barefoot and all that. But after that, that kind of fell apart, and it didn't feel like that fish out of water. He didn't feel like he wasn't used to living in this world. And it would have made it much more interesting if that's the way they went with it, giving him humor. He should have been humorous. Out of all the characters, he should have been the one who was the most levity. I think right now they tried to do it with Luke Cage, give him some levity, but it came off as goofy and corny to me, very B-movie-ish, and it shouldn't with these Netflix shows because they're pretty good quality, right? And I feel like Jessica Jones is probably the lightest person in the group, and she's still pretty dark and gritty, right? So Iron Fist should have been light in a very happy, monk, Buddhist-y, spiritual way, and that should have gave us some comedy, and it just fell flat. They didn't do it right, and I guarantee you, if they did that, it would have made all of the corporate stuff more interesting. It would have made all of the decisions he made in the corporation and Rand Corporation much more interesting. And that fell flat for me. The first couple of episodes felt soapy, but I thought the writing was solid as the show went. And that's why I give this one a slight edge over Luke Cage, because of the fact that it gradually got better, whereas Luke Cage was like good, then bad, and then good. You know what I mean? And I had a hard time with that. So the writing to me was okay, but a lot of the characters didn't feel like they found their character till way too late in the season. Till episode 6 or 7 is when I really started believing these people, these actors, as their characters for the most part. Madame Gao and Claire are all exceptions. And Ward was pretty on point from the beginning. But everybody else, I wasn't believing who they were until later in the season. And that to me means that pre-production may have been rushed. And these people didn't have enough time to understand their characters and their motivations. And maybe they didn't get the right notes, or their notes were focusing on the wrong things. And once again, this goes back to a showrunner problem. But I brought it up in a writing aspect because, it's really more of a production aspect. Okay. What else didn't I like? Okay, let's get to the budget. This to me felt like the show that had the least amount of money thrown at it. The Iron Fist looked cool, and I understand why it wasn't there a lot. This is an origin story of sorts. Not really. It should have been more of an origin story. We should have got more of Kunlun. I'll get to that in a second. That's my next complaint. But the budget for this show should have been on the higher end, since all their other shows were successful, so they knew that a lot of people were going to tune in for this. They should have went for the best quality possible. And I don't mean in the actors. Most of the actors were fine to me. Like I said, I don't know if it was Finn Jones wasn't right or if he didn't have the time, but the budget to me felt flat. The action felt like it needed more money put into it. That's it. More time and more money put into it. And the Iron Fist thing, like I said, I understand why it wasn't there and why it wasn't there a lot. And when it was there, it was really, really cool. So I don't think they could have really done more with that. But then I look at little things like not even close to any type of costume other than his green and yellow monk robes. But by the end, maybe he should have had something. I don't know. Or throughout. Maybe he should have been sprinkled wearing green and yellow throughout the show. Maybe they didn't. I just didn't notice it. I don't know. And I thought the burn, I don't want to call it a tattoo because it's really a burn, but it looks like a tattoo. Even in the comics, it looks like a tattoo of the dragon. The first couple of times I see it, because you see it in the light, it looks like like one of those rub-on tattoos. And that's terrible for a show of this quality, of, a show that should be of better quality, I should say, for this network and this Marvel thing and the series and all that. And I don't know, it just didn't look like a real burn or tattoo or mark. It looked fake. And that, to me, is just terrible. Claire Temple, look, I love her. I love Rosario Dawson. Like, she's like my dream woman. I love her. But in this one, more than any of them, she felt shoehorned in. She felt natural in Luke Cage with the way the story progressed, and she had already met Luke in Jessica Jones, and she definitely felt natural in Daredevil movies. I mean, shows, excuse me, both seasons. But in this one, she felt crammed in just to cram her in, just to tie her into everything. I didn't like that. And all you have to do is put Claire in her medical role. She doesn't need to turn into a badass and fight and get into the action like everybody else. You know, I'm not saying she has to be the damsel in distress. She's really not. But she comes and saves the day in her own way. Not everybody needs to be a hero in the fact that they're going to kick ass. Right? People can be heroes in other ways, and I feel like you take away from the heroics of a doctor by making her have to get into the action. She should have just been a really heroic gangster ass doctor. That's it. And if you wanted to throw more connections in there, fucking Danny Rand needs a lawyer. Why isn't Matt Murdock anywhere? And I understand you want to put Hogarth in, and that's good. They should have. But she came across as a villain in Daredevil 2 and Jessica Jones, and in this one she came across as kind of a good guy till towards the end. I guess that was one of the twists that they wanted to put in there, but I felt like it would have been better for her to go bad halfway through and then have to get Charlie Cox to come in. And even if you can't afford him, which, come on, they should have threw more money at the show, but even if excuse me, they couldn't afford him for some reason, then you have reference to it. You have a quick scene or a quick phone call, something. Come on, Claire Temple knows the guy. She doesn't recommend him. It just doesn't make sense. I actually saw the guys, a couple other guys online over at Collider, talk about a similar thing, and it was funny because as they're talking about it, I was thinking about that while I'm watching the show, which is never a good sign. Which is one of the signs you know a show is not great, when you're thinking about these types of things all throughout instead of just sprinkled out here and there or at the end when you're finished, as most great shows, that's the way it is. Okay, last thing, Kunlun. You talk about it all show, you get me all hyped for it, and then I don't even really get to see it. I don't get to see any dragon. I don't get to see his quest through the cave. Maybe they're saving that for a season 2, but with the reception this is getting, I don't know if it's going to get a season 2. Honestly. And I really feel like they could have threw a little bit more money at this show and just had that money used towards the Charlie Cox appearance, and not that he's this big name actor, but just to get another one of your main stars in the show. So the Charlie Cox appearance, and then it didn't have to be appearance. It could have just been a reference. Just like they referenced Luke Cage. Just like they referenced Jessica Jones. Anyway, I'm off topic. Kunlun. So they should have put the budget towards Kunlun and had us show the society and how it worked and how the people lived instead of just various mountains and forest shots. That was ridiculous. We should have seen his quest through to get to the dragon. You didn't have to do some big elaborate dragon like Game of Thrones or like Lord of the Rings. You could have just shown us the face, gave us a nice good face. If Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. can afford to make Ghost Rider look as good as he did on that show, which wasn't perfect, but it looked good, then you could have gave us the face of a dragon. And I'm sure they could have found ways around it to show him going for the heart and all that. Or you don't show that part. You just show the confrontation with the dragon and then them go at each other or something and then cut to him coming out of the cave. And I would have been fine with that. Show us Kunlun. Show us what it's about. So at the end, when it's, spoiler alert, destroyed and gone, you understand it better and you feel it more and you care that this place is gone now. The whole show, they're teasing at it, and then we barely get to see it. And that was a big mess. And just him talking about him in Davos, no good. We should have had flashbacks throughout the whole season of Kunlun and Danny and his training and his relationship with Davos and how they were breaking the rules, and still they're kind of not really noble monks, and they're up for this big noble position, both of them. They should have showed more of that, more of their rivalry coming up, growing up. That would have been amazing. Amazing if they did that spurted out throughout the season. But nope, they didn't do it. They gave us red eyes in a cave and showed us nothing of his trials. And back to the budget, you could have threw more budget into things like when he was going up the build, through the building, Madame Gao's tournament, and made that a lot better, because that felt like it should have been awesome. And it's the RZA, and he did the best he could with what he had, but that should have been way better than it was. Daredevil's action, Daredevil's stuff blows this shit away, and it shouldn't, because this should be a martial arts show. And to me, all these problems, all except for the budget, all go back to Scott Buck. Sorry, Scott Buck, being the showrunner. He didn't understand this material. He doesn't understand martial arts movies, and this should have been a kung fu movie. Yeah, have that business stuff, but like I said, make Danny Rand a kung fu character in that business world. Amazing. You would have had it right there. That's where you went wrong, and they can't course correct it now. So we have to deal with that the way we have to deal with that, and hope that maybe they get a second season, change up the showrunner, and give us more of that backstory and make Danny Rand feel more like a spiritual, mystical character. Excuse me. And you're good. All right, that's it for this vid. Way longer than I wanted it to be. You want to sound off? Let me know how you feel about the video or your feelings of Iron Fist, whether I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm an asshole, whatever you want to do. Good, bad, the ugly. I want to hear it all. I love the constructive criticism. I say this every single video. So don't be afraid to sound off. And thanks for watching. That's it for this vid, and I will see you next time.